several FBI agents have now been fired for their involvement in a scandal arguably worse than Watergate. That is, at least, according to Republican Senator Chuck Grassley, who, along with other Republicans, released an internal FBI document suggesting that the agency analyzed the phone records of more than half a dozen Republican lawmakers back in 2023. Right, and that is part of an investigation into Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. And most of the lawmakers there were among those who had planned to vote against certifying the election on January 6, 2021, including Josh Hawley, Lindsey Graham, and Ron Johnson. Right, and after the attack on the Capitol, some of them did end up voting to still accept the results, though others still voted against certification. But then also with that, important note is that the records analyzed were from a few days during the week of January 6th, and they only enabled investigators to see basic information about the date and the time of the calls, not the content of the communications. Though the specifics there, it didn't stop Josh Hawley from falsely claiming yesterday that the FBI document showed that agents had actually engaged in wiretapping. Right, and that is, these records were obtained through a subpoena authorized by a grand jury, according to the senators who released the document. Now with all this, there's been no solid evidence that the Biden White House actually influenced the investigation. Right, in the name of avoiding any kind of interference, former Attorney General Merrick Garland actually appointed Jack Smith as a special prosecutor to oversee criminal investigations into Trump back in 2022. And while the Supreme Court eventually ruled that presidents have immunity for certain acts while in office, leading to cases against Trump to be dismissed at Smith's request, Smith did release his final report in January, with Smith writing that, quote, nobody within the Department of Justice ever sought to interfere with or improperly influence his prosecutorial decision-making, as well as noting that he believed that the evidence would have been sufficient to obtain a conviction. But despite all that, you have Republicans using the phone records to argue that the Biden administration had politicized the department. And that brings us to Grassley saying that the weaponization by federal law enforcement under Biden was arguably worse than Watergate. Right, and then you had Trump himself writing on social media, deranged Jack Smith got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, a real sleazebag. Right, and then along with FBI Director Kash Patel repeating the claim that the Biden administration had weaponized law enforcement against the American people, he added that they had fired those who acted unethically, dismantled the agency group tasked with investigating public corruption that had been involved, and launched an investigation into the matter. Then Deputy Director Dan Bongino adding, under our leadership, the FBI will never again be used as a political weapon against the American people. But then, of course, with all this, you have many arguing that, right, everything we're seeing here is actually being used to justify Trump's own politicization of law enforcement. Right, several FBI agents who worked on cases related to January 6th, they've already been fired since Trump returned to office. Also last month, 3 former top officials actually sued Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi, alleging that they had been retaliated against for investigating Trump. Right, and then there are all these ongoing cases against his perceived enemies, including, of course, James Comey, who we just saw making his first appearance in court today. Right, and so all of this, it's kind of yet another chapter and something we're going to have to keep our eyes on, see where this situation ultimately leaves us.